For years, shipping's primary boardroom conversation centered on decarbonization, mapping green corridors, and drafting press releases about net zero horizons. In early 2026, the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz demonstrated the fragility of those environmental timelines. This narrow channel handles 20% of global oil trade. When transit through the strait was threatened, the industry's priority shifted immediately to energy security and basic fleet mobility. This chart shows Brent crude in March 2026. As prices spiked toward $115 to $120 a barrel, the commercial math for conventional marine fuels became hostile. Keeping ships bunkered and moving became the singular board-level agenda, superseding long-term climate goals. The Hormuz crisis repriced the green transition overnight, adding a substantial risk premium to every long-term fuel strategy. Proposed alternatives to fossil fuels rely almost entirely on the scaling of green methanol and ammonia. While Europe and the US move slowly through investment cycles, the physical production capacity for these fuels is being established elsewhere. China leads the world in green fuel production capacity. Developing zero-carbon fuel at a commercial scale requires this sprawling industrial footprint. Transitioning away from Middle Eastern oil creates a direct dependency on Chinese industrial output. The geography changes, but the strategic vulnerability remains. Global trade must continue regardless of these shifting vulnerabilities. Ships must maintain their schedules through any geopolitical climate. The maritime industry is executing a geopolitical swap, trading a reliance on Middle Eastern crude for a dependency on Chinese industrial manufacturing. Beyond fuel availability, ship owners face immediate regulatory pressure on their operating expenses, led by the European Union. The EU took unilateral action on maritime emissions pricing while the rest of the industry waited for global consensus. As of January 2026, shipping is fully integrated into the EU emissions trading scheme. Intra-EU voyages now require 100% emissions coverage. This chart outlines the financial trap. Alternative fuels carry a cost multiplier of 2 to 5 times conventional fuel. On the right, the fuel EU penalty stands at €2,400 per ton. While EU penalties are active today, the IMO net zero framework remains pending. The market remains fragmented. Methanol, ammonia, and biofuels all present significant technical and commercial trade-offs without a clear winner. Carbon is an immediate cost on today's balance sheet, yet the alternative fuel supply chains required to avoid these costs do not exist at scale. Mainstream maritime media often suggests that ship owners must pick a fuel pathway immediately to ensure their survival. This ignores the reality of asset lock-in. A new vessel represents a 25-year commitment to a specific engine architecture. Committing a multi-million-dollar asset to a fuel that lacks a global infrastructure represents a substantial capital risk. Delaying a fuel selection is a calculated financial hedge. In a volatile regulatory environment, preserving capital and maintaining optionality provides better long-term performance than early adoption of an unscaled technology. Placing irreversible capital bets before the commercial landscape clears is an ineffective business strategy. Operators are making proactive investments today, focusing on technologies that bypass the uncertainty of the fuel markets. Fuel-agnostic efficiency technologies represent the lowest-risk interventions currently available to the fleet. Wind-assisted propulsion is already deployed. This vessel uses a vertical rotor sail to reduce its main engine load. This visualization represents 1.7 billion kilometers of operational data, confirming a consistent 6 to 10% reduction in fuel consumption. Air lubrication systems show similar momentum, with over 150 vessels operational and 250 systems on order. These systems work by blanketing the hull's surface in microbubbles, reducing the friction between the steel and the water. The commercial logic is simple. Whether a ship burns heavy fuel oil or expensive green methanol, using 10% less fuel permanently protects profit margins. Global trade relies on the baseline reality that ships move. Cargo must reach its destination regardless of the regulatory landscape. Fleet managers must navigate a chaotic macro environment while planning for the next decade of operations. This risk matrix features 3 variables: fuel supply, regulatory frameworks, and vessel consumption. Global fuel infrastructure and maritime law currently spin erratically, making long-term prediction impossible. A deliberate downward pull on vessel consumption is the only way to stabilize the entire equation. efficiency is the only financial lever under the direct and total control of the shipowner. Port operations will not pause for the global maritime industry to reach a comfortable consensus on future fuels. The strategic imperative is to build optionality, avoid overcommitment to a single fuel, and relentlessly reduce baseline consumption today. Shipping survival rests on today's mathematical realities, not the optimistic press releases of tomorrow.